2 years, Greg Hamerton has been creating a fantasy novel. It's hard work, writing and rewriting, especially when there's another theme flitting through his thoughts. When flying conditions are good, his work must take second place, and he heads for the mountains. Soon he is flying, weightless and carefree. Even after 9 years of paragliding, Greg still marvels at their ease of use and maneuverability. The wing is formed by 2 layers of nylon fabric, and a narrow opening along the front edge allows air to fill the many cells to maintain an aerofoil. A web of Kevlar lines suspends the pilot about 8 meters below in a comfortable harness. Control loops gripped in either hand turn the glider left or right. And that's it, fabric and string, and with a few months of practice, you can fly off almost anything.
But yeah, what a beautiful day to be out in the sky. Much better than sitting in the office.
A pastime that is so much fun attracts many colourful people. They are an ironic crowd of freedom seekers. Things can get hectic on the ground. Small wonder then that there is another breed of pilot, and they do it alone.
I think it's one of those things you're born with it. Either you have it or you don't.
Purists like Johan Anderson have been flying hang gliders for over 16 years.
First time my feet left the ground, I just couldn't stop. I couldn't get enough of it.
Like Greg, he funds his dream by teaching the wonder of flight to others.
Turn left. That's it. Okay, turn right. Very good. Now fly faster.
I think probably the reason why I started instructing is to teach other people to fly and have them go through the same experiences. I truly believe it's one of the ultimate things to do.
The hang glider is a metal framework which makes it heavier and more cumbersome than a paraglider on the ground. It takes longer to rig, but the rigidity of the wing brings the promise of more speed and performance. Johan needs a cleaner runway or more wind to launch in, but once he's airborne, he's sleeker and made in the image of an eagle.
You just lift off the ground and you're flying. You've totally shaken the bonds of gravity. If ever you've had a dream that you are flying and you're floating over all the buildings and your arms outstretched, now in reality, with hang gliding, it's 10 times better.
Johan controls the hang glider by moving his body, constantly adjusting his speed and direction to use the rising air currents. He was an inspiring figure in the empty sky. Greg had to respond to the challenge of Johan soaring overhead. And so their friendship began. At first there was an obvious gap between their crafts. The hang glider was faster, while the paraglider could turn tighter. But they soon found that there was a joy to be had in sharing the air when conditions allowed the crossover.
Greg is one of those guys that I think everybody just can't help liking the guy. He's got a very nice personality, a lot of enthusiasm, especially for the sport. Just that love for flying is what actually makes people gel, and we all get along pretty well.
Their common search for rising columns of warm air or thermals that could keep their wings airborne was destined to bring them together.
We both really enjoy the sky and just flying and being out there, so there's already that connection there.
A friendly rivalry quickly grew.
Yummy!
Flying together was inspiring, so Johan and Greg decided that an expedition to the bigger skies inland was afoot.
No butter.
The fresh air crew was called upon to join them on the adventure.
That should be good enough.
Their dream was to use the gliders to travel as far as they could on a multi-day aerial journey from the remote town of Barrydale in the Southern Cape interior. A local protea farmer, Marty Taljaard, invited us to use his mountain to fly from. There is a different pace in the country. Adventures cannot be rushed. And sometimes the weather just isn't ready.
This is just a perfect demonstration of how sometimes absolutely nothing can happen. Nothing.
I find I have a rather strange-looking reserve parachute. You run out of space where to put things, so I've got my 2-minute noodles and I've got all my food and stuff is in here. So if I throw this, I'll end up with 2-minute noodles all over the sky. That'll make a strange incident report.
Is that a bad sign?
At last, the breeze whispered up the slope. The wind was too light for Johan, but Greg was determined to make the most of this paraglider's advantage.
But in the end, they end up.
He tends to be a little bit slow in the mornings.
He's just playing. He's loosening up all his muscles, warming up for the flight.
Like he's faffing around while I'm ready to go, you know, and that's just the difference in our craft.
Just sort of 3 hours too early.
And then, before Johan could finish rigging his hang glider, the wind changed. They had to find a new launch site.
But strong.
Right. Let's get ready.
But on the south side of the mountain, a big challenge presented itself for Greg.
Looking good.
Wind. Lots of it. It was way too strong for a little shopping bag with strings.
So we sit and we wait.
Greg would be blown over the crest of the mountain if he attempted to fly.
Those are cool, those are cool. Just the undersurface battles. Yeah, just push it.
Johan, with his faster wing, was eager and confident.
Thank you. Woo!
Hate him! Bastard! Bastard! No, it's not a problem at all. Highlights the difference between the two craft.
Just the warm touch when you lie sleeping out.
It looks like it's quite thermic up and down there.
It's quite strong up here, Greg. It is very thermic. All right, boys, let's see if I can get cloud base.
Johan demonstrated what inland flying was all about. By circling in the thermals, he could quickly gain altitude to as high as the cloud base. The beeping of his variometer signaled the lift, allowing him to see the invisible currents. Johan was specking out, as these pilots say.
We can try and get to cloud base.
To turn away from an adventure is always difficult, but the sky is unforgiving, and Greg knew that the risks outweighed the safety that day.
Hitting lots of sink here.
Things weren't going all that well for Johan either.
Not very high, we're in a bit of trouble here, I think. We'll have to go on, there's a big open plain ahead. If we don't get into there, we're going to have to land. Keep speed and hot play. Yep, there we go. Okay, we are down, and that wasn't a very successful attempt.
And so it was on that first day. The Fresh Air crew went in search of a hang glider somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
Greg, Marty, anybody for radio check? Greg, Marty, anybody for radio check? No.
It's definitely down there. You gotta put down.
Right, this is where I've landed. As you can see out there, we actually came from those mountains out.
Johan had been forced to land in the foothills, some 20 kilometers away from the mountains he'd just flown off. Finding him was not a simple task.
It's a good thing we're 4x4.
Yeah, Johan, just get down to the road and we'll meet you there.
Am I glad to see you guys? I'm knackered. You know, these things weigh quite a bit. It's like about probably close to 45 kgs.
Sometimes you just got to wait for the sun to go around the earth once more.
So it was back to the base at Marty's pub for some spirited discussion. But the weatherman foretold their doom.
No.
West again.
Doesn't look good.
With the new dawn came bad weather. It blew all that day, and the next, and the next. The foul weather had us beaten, so we decided to launch a second attempt from Porterville in the Western Cape.
Straight off and out.
Greg and Johan's goal was still to fly distance together.
We've been really frustrated for 4 or 5 days, just feeling ground bound. And it's really nice to be able to actually get up into the air and do our thing. I can let you see that we haven't actually got an engine at all. No motor at the bottom, it's just a wing. And now I'm just going down and down and down. But I'll never give up until both my feet are on the ground. So even if I'm going down to the landing field, I'm anticipating a thermal. I'm expecting the thermal. Oh, come and join me. Oh, yes, please. It's a nice thermal.
Greg had found the lift he needed. He was up and away.
Hey Johan, it's getting kind of difficult for me to stay here. The drift is definitely with a southerly wind.
Johan was quick to join him.
There we go. We're just staying in front of the ridge over here, and it's good.
Yeehaw! Flying free.
Finally, their aerial adventure had begun.
Just gone past 2,000 feet above takeoff.
They began to fly fast along the chain of mountains, and we had to race to keep up.
The view is amazing, and it's nice and cool up here. That's the best part. It's nice and cool.
Landlords say the rent is late. You may have to litigate. Don't worry. Be happy.
Yeah, it's amazing. There are 2 black eagles that's next to me and were flying with me. That crews a really good omen for flying.
Don't worry. You got a whole of spiderwebs caught in the lines. It's really quite weird. And these little spiders are sitting up here 1,000 meters above the ground. And they're also doing cross-country flying. And I actually hooked them with my lines. And I'll be able to see there, as the lines catch the sunlight, you can see the spider webs actually trapped in each of the lines.
Okay, we've got us in a spot of trouble here. We're not very high. Desperately hoping we're going to get a thermal. There's nothing.
Your hand's underneath me.
And Greg is getting up in it because he's higher.
They both searched for the same thing. Thermals were crucial to staying aloft. But thermals are elusive and invisible.
Come on, baby. Come on, baby. Woo! Here we go, boys.
Their luck changed often throughout the day.
What a climb.
I can't see thermals, but I can certainly visualize them. It's a very important factor for a pilot is to have a good imagination because you can't see the air. So you have to imagine where these rising columns of air are going to be.
Greg, I've just gone past 7,000 feet ASL.
So this bit of flying can be done really quickly. There's a ridge, gives you an idea.
The southerly wind at their backs was growing stronger and stronger.
Just cruise flat out, and there should be enough lift on the ridge to keep us going.
But their problems were not over. The weather was changing on the mountains ahead. They needed to find a landing site soon before the conditions became too dangerous.
Oh, there are some big clouds.
Pretty rough, that thermal, eh? Wicked stuff.
Sometimes it gets really tricky. And when you're in mountains and you suddenly get strong lift and very strong winds, you can get caught out really quickly.
The dam is, we're thinking maybe of landing at the dam.
pretty terrifying when you come down and the wind's really howling. You get dragged across the ground and over obstacles and through rocks and, you know, whatever's in your path.
On this little lake below us.
We're going to have a hell of a walk because they're not in this first ridge, they're on the ridge behind, I think. They're going to try and land somewhere up there. Who's carrying that tripod?
That's your job.
Oh, please, man. It's always my job. Excellent. Alrighty, catch you later.
This is as far as we can go
Do we need a sleeping bag?
by car, so we're going to have to walk now. I think they're going to be
You got some
going,
biscuits for
trying to
me?
land not this ridge, but the next ridge over. So we've got a bit of walking to do. I think I'm quite keen to start paragliding.
It's one of the advantages of flying a paraglider is that you can land them in very small places, and you can land them on the side of the hill, on top of the hill. Whereas with a hang glider, we normally need a bigger runway or a clearer area.
There we go. That was a fast landing. Touchdown. Lovely. My friggin' back. I think I've just put it out on this damn heavy glider.
I think this is an excellent place. I was looking at it from the air. And I think it's got everything we need. We've got some trees. We've got a lovely little dam here. We've got the mountain behind it to launch tomorrow.
After 5 hours of flying, they landed in the wilderness. The location was perfect, with water, shade, and a launch site nearby.
Now when the earth is still and I'm thinking of you.
Johan's never slept in the bush with a boy before. It's in for a big surprise.
Listen, I'm wrapping myself up in that parachute, okay? You see, it's good to team up hang gliding with paragliding. I mean, look at this combination.
Missing me. I'm wishing you were here.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. With our first edition of Can't Cook, Will Cook.
Can't cook, will cook. Straight out of the I Hate to Cook book.
There's something really calming and peaceful about having a fire in the evening.
A typical morning fog meant that there was no hurry the next day.
We'll just give it a while to blow away.
I hope so. I hope it'll warm up.
How was your night?
Clear up. That was fine. Night was good. Except, as usual, the ground got hard at about 2 o'clock in the morning. What seems to be the problem?
I'm not sure whether the pot's dirty or whether it's just the water.
Let me have a look.
I think it's probably just the water.
Nah, you just boil the water and away it goes, all your problems.
Kill them!
Mr. Hamerton is the one that convinced me to overnight with a hang glider on the hill. Now, that's not really something that hang glider pilots do.
Sharon, your glider's heavy, buddy.
You've got the light in there trying to stop moaning. This morning when we woke up, I said I hated you. So I know that's an understatement.
We go look for a launch site.
They had to find a takeoff site suitable for both crafts in order to continue their journey. It was not going to be easy.
Well, we're on the edge of the mountain here, but the trick now is to actually find a good, safe launch spot. This is a little bit narrow for my wings.
Yeah, so it's very gnarly here.
Most of it is very rugged, lots of rocks. And if you don't go perfectly level, you suddenly hit the straight updraft winds. And if the one wing is slightly in front of the other, that one will get lifted first. So when it lifts, there's a good chance of the wing closest to the hill touching the hill. You can get off from here. But yeah, the search has paid off. We got it. It's perfect. Perfect little gully.
Yeah, boy.
I mean, look at that.
It's getting strong already, so I'm going to get going.
Okay.
Yeah, ready to go. It's looking quite good. It's getting really hot. Phew, starting to get thermic.
Greg's takeoff was going to be relatively simple compared to Johan's.
Right, now the wind dummy is up and we can see what the air is doing.
Okay, here's the morning flight taken off. Just trying to get up on this ridge. Very low. Oh, this is low. Low and desperate. This is great. I've now got into the thermal I was looking for. Should be able to climb a bit in this. It's looking lovely. I think it's going to be a really lovely day.
We were all worried for Johan. If one of his wingtips hooked on the protruding bushes,
Good one, come for a good one.
he would be in serious trouble.
Okay, here we go. That's it, keep going. That's it. Oh.
And they shared the skies again. To climb away from their remote perch and to continue onwards had been their goal. The sky was filled with rising promise, and they were lost in their adventure. Two free spirits beneath their chosen wings. Where would they fly to? Wherever the wind would take them.
So close your eyes and let it go free. You drift away and I'll come drifting. We sail together with the night closing in. We sail together with the night.
Just give it a last bit of a fluffing.
Are you a fluffer?
I'm a fluffer.